Good evening, everyone. It's about 1:20 in the morning here in the holy city of Tzfat. I'm overlooking the valley of the great cemetery of Tzadikim, which our sages say millions of people are actually buried there. It looks like several thousand, but millions is another whole story. Where did they go? Well, you could ask another question. Why does it matter? But you see, when a person leaves this world, he leaves a trace behind. And that trace, we believe, is going to be brought back one day. Now, how it's brought back and what the mechanics, the spiritual mechanics are, I'm not sure. But I believe. And, the coming back to life is an interesting idea after you lived 120 years. Why do you want to come back? Didn't we do it all? What's left to do? Well, we're coming back to something completely different. And Rabbi Nachman says that 70 years can be compressed into 15 minutes. He brings the famous story of Honi HaMagel, who went beneath a rock and fell asleep, and he came back 70 years later. Well, when he came back, he found a young man planting a carob tree. And he said, "For whom are you planting this carob tree?" And he said, "Well, for my generations, my children, children's children that will come and eat the carobs down the road." But Honi said, "But it's going to take 70 years before that tree gives forth fruit." And the man said, "So trees were planted for me 70 years ago so that I could eat the carobs. So too, I'm going to plant carobs for 2 more generations to come." Now, Holi went to a rock and he fell asleep, the Gemara says. And he woke up 70 years later. And he went out and he saw someone planting carob trees. And he looked at the man, and the man looked at him, and he said, "Who are you?" He said, "I'm the son of the son of the son of the son. Who are you?" "And I'm Honi HaMagel." And he said, "Oh, you're that rabbi that disappeared." Honi was still the elderly sage that he was after sleeping for 70 years. So you could sleep for 70 years, Rabbi Nachman says, and think that you've lived a full life. And he said all that 70 years can be compressed into 15 minutes. Now, how do we see this idea of the compression of time? Well, this is one story. Of course, the most famous is of Jacob, that it says when he made a deal with Lavan Ha'arami, the deceitful one. He made a deal to marry Rachel, and he married, of course, Leah. And afterwards, he said, "Oh, no, I'll give you Rachel, but you'll just have to work longer." He worked 7 more years after he worked 7 years for Leah. And so the Torah tells us that it was like Ahad Yamim. It was like one day. 7 years, one day. How is that possible? Well, the rabbis comment because of his great love for Rachel. And he also saw the vision of the Beit HaMikdash through her, which is a very interesting idea, that a man could see the Beit HaMikdash through an image of his wife. But the compression of time, 7 years in a day, what is the vehicle of the compression? What is the thing that makes me come back to this site 32 years ago? I landed on this spot here in Tzfat. A single guy, a black beard, right? Sandals, a t-shirt, looking for God. No one told me that God was inside. I had to figure that out after a little bit of hard work. But those 32 years, where did they go? If a person's sad, it seems like, 32 years. Oh, what's happened? It's so long. So much has happened, so much suffering, disappointments. Look at what's happened in the world in the last 32 years. We entered the digital age. And we entered the age of digital terrorism as well. Oh, so much has happened. Now, that's what we say when we're sad. But when you're happy, when you're in love with life, when you're in love with people, when you're in love with God's Torah, and of course, the author, 32 years, it could be yesterday. Now, another proof of this idea of the compression of time, of course, is the simple experience of a dream. Baruch Hashem, I have a lot of dreams. Pretty much I can program dreams. You know, the dreams that come out early in the morning, especially on Shabbos morning, the rabbis teach in Masechet Brachot that is a little bit of prophecy. Okay, so God's giving you a little help, you know, showing you the tiny bit of the future. But one time I kept my watch. I woke up, you know, those little wake-ups in the morning where you don't really get out of bed, you don't really rise into full consciousness. I had put my stopwatch beside the bed. And I set it off and I went back to sleep. And I had this long dream and it was really, wow, it was like a 2-hour movie. And I woke up and I was astounded. Like 3 minutes had passed. In the dream, it seemed huge and expanded. In the time of the mind. But in Kabbalah, time begins below your mind. Time begins at your shoulders, where your heart starts to record. The real clock is not up here, my friends. The real clock is in the heart. And when you love what you do, there is no time. Because you're in love. You're not in time. And so when you're in a dream, and it's a good dream meaning you don't wake up sweating and shaking and screaming. Not so funny. But when you're in a good dream, then it's a transportation out of the level of the shoulders down, out of time. When you go out of time, everything expands. You know, and there's a lot to understand here because it's not just that our mind expands, it's our soul. What the rabbis use the phrase, itpashtut gashmiut, which I remember the Shakespearean phrase, you know, to shuffle off the mortal coil. Right? And there's another phrase, his soul was removed from its sheath, like a sword, you know, coming out of the sheath that holds the sword. What happens to the soul when it comes out of your body? It doesn't get smaller. It's already small enough. When the soul emerges from the body, it receives expansion. Expansion of consciousness, expansion of time, expansion of knowledge, expansion of space. That's why the Midrash says Moshe Rabbeinu was 15 amos tall. 10. 10 amos, which is 10 measures, which are 10 sphirot, which are 10 spiritual planes. But they're also a height of the soul of Moses. See, because Moses was in a body like everyone else. And I don't believe that his wife married a 5-meter tall guy, you know, 12 feet tall. I don't believe that would have been a very difficult shidduch to make, you know, to marry some guy who's 12 feet tall. Anyways, but the concept I think we could see, that we are in these bodies, we're compressed. So time is compressed. But when we enter love, when we enter Hashem, when we enter the Torah, when we enter meditation, when we enter our own true selves with the right attitude, things start to expand. I used to walk up and down these streets in Tzfat, and there's these, I take a little pan here for you folks. See here, it's really a beautiful place. And it's nighttime, so you don't get to see a lot, but, you could see far across the hill, the mountain over there. That's the kever of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, this cluster of lights. And I used to walk around here like, what's going to be next with my life? I'm 30 years old. What am I doing here? What am I going to do? I'm going to sit and learn. I'm going to go to yeshiva. I'm going to try to catch up a little bit on 30 years of, American youth, shall we say. And it seemed like a long time. And now it seems so short. So what does that mean? That my mind doesn't work as good? Well, maybe in certain ways, but I think what it's teaching is that when we live a life that we're happy in and happy with, and we're making choices we want to make from our deepest place, time doesn't get its claws in us. It doesn't sink those claws of, tenacity to hold us back, hold you down, hold you in place. You're not going anywhere. It's 40 years. You're going to work for this company 9 to 5. You're going to get your pension, and you're going to look back and say, okay, now what? What did I do in 40 years besides, stick mail in a box? I don't know. That's the old reference. But, I think it's never too late to sit aside for a bit and be alone and decide, well, what am I here doing? Am I here to make money? It's like, okay, make money is good. Pay your bills, well, most of them, pay for your house, send your kids off to school, make your wife happy. That's not what money's for. But Rabbi Nachman says for a true person of the spirit, money is like, well, it doesn't really change much. It takes a little pressure off the heart because we haven't done the work to purify the heart from the thing itself. But when you lose the love of money, and it happens, it really can, believe it or not, even in America. But when you lose that love of money, you know what happens? You feel young. You feel younger. All that responsibility is gone. And what's the responsibility? It's the responsibility you feel to your dream of yourself. Who I should be. How much I should have in the bank. What kind of 2-5 account I have. How many investments I have. I'm living according to imagination of who I think I should be. Now, does that sound like a free life? A life where I could have room in my mind for the divine? So, let's get a handle on things here. Let's understand that time is a created entity. And it is an entity that is designed for us to appreciate what we have, not to enslave us. No, not to make us feel depressed because I live the 9 to 5. Now, I understand the 9 to 5 is kind of changing. It's getting a little shorter. So maybe this is part of the revolution, part of the evolution of the human being, is that we don't have to give our lives to the servitude of money. Because we want to feel that expansion from the compression of time. We want to emerge from 40 years of work and say, wow, what a life. What a rich, full life I've lived. And I have to be honest with you, I do feel that. And I'm grateful to God, to the land of Israel, to my wife, to my family. I'm grateful to all you folks out there on YouTube that care enough to listen. Because Torah is why we're here. Because it has all the steps in the ladder. And we learned on Friday that, a person can be reincarnated into this world and not want to work. All he wants to do is pray and learn. Now, I work, actually. That's why I became a psychologist. But the truth is, psychology, if it's done right, it's just spiritual work also. And with a little different vocabulary and maybe a little different prescriptions once in a while. But, if we can really discover our relationship to the Torah and to God, then we automatically have a ticket out of this tyranny of time. And you wake up at 62 and you feel 26. Now, there are mornings where I don't feel 26, it's true. But, a hot shower can do a lot of good. But I want to bless you all to feel the agelessness of your soul, the agelessness of your Creator. Here in Israel, it's very easy to feel agelessness and historiosity, coming down from every rock and every tree. There are trees here that are, there's old trees everywhere, but there happen to be a lot of olive trees that have been around for 500, 700 years. And I feel like humbled by the tree. You stuck it out 500 years, like why? But I think we got a lot to stick it out for, and your children, and your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren are going to be happy to see you. And you're going to have something to give them when you have the Torah. So invest now and receive the dividends for all time. God bless you all. Shavua Tov. We'll see you on all the outlets. Check us out on Patreon. And I'm tired of listing all those things and asking you to like me. Please like me. It sounds so absurd, doesn't it? But, we know love is in the air. Spring is on the way. Shavua Tov.